Welcome to the Possibility Action Network podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Middleton, aka Possibility Man. We're committed to bringing you guests who strive to better people's lives and serve as a force for good in the world. Today, our guest is Jamie Taratoot. She is the founder and executive director of EveryMom Chicago, a nonprofit organization that connects expectant mothers in underserved communities, but with material and resources. It matters, Jamie says, because every mom deserves to feel prepared, supported, and celebrated. Jamie Taratoot, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much, Stephen. It's really nice to be here, and I'm so glad you reached out, and it's so nice to be able to sit here and talk with you.
Great. So are you in Chicago today?
I am in Chicago. I'm in Hyde Park on the south side of Chicago.
Okay, a city on the lake. Well, I'm in South Carolina, and our temperature today will be around 95 degrees. What is it like on the lake in Chicago?
I think today it's like almost 80. It's a little humid. I took the dogs to the park with my daughter this morning. It's nice, but it's not too hot yet.
I got you. Okay. Hey, Joe, so you live in Chicago now. Are you a native Chicagoan, Jamie?
No, I'm from Atlanta originally. So I'm a Southern girl originally from Atlanta. I grew up there. I moved to New York when I was 18. I spent about 14 to 18 years, almost 18 years actually in New York. There were a few years where I lived abroad in New York City. And then I came to Chicago about 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago now.
Okay, okay. So what was the Big Apple like for you?
Oh, wow. It was good. It was somewhere that I had always wanted to live. I think growing up, when I was growing up, I wanted to get out of the South. I was ready to leave the South. But it's a very intense place to live. And I myself, have a lot of baseline anxiety. So I think long-term, it was probably not the right fit for me. I'm glad I had the opportunity to live there. I was just talking to somebody yesterday. I have an intern right now, and she was asking me, what it was like to live there. And I am really glad I had the opportunity to live there and live there for so long. But I'm also glad to not be there anymore. I'm really happy to be in Chicago. I think Chicago to me is almost like if you mashed up Atlanta and New York together. It kind of has the best of both situations.
Wow, I've never heard that explained that way before. That's interesting. Yeah.
It has like the greenery of Atlanta and like some
Yeah.
of the hospitality of Atlanta, but it also has like all of the great things of a big city and great, culture and music. And I don't know, it has a nice like hybrid.
That's
So
fantastic. So you said you also traveled abroad. Did you say travel abroad or live abroad?
both, but I lived in Australia for a couple of years, actually.
Australia. I've never
Yeah.
been down under. What was
Yeah.
that like? Which city were you in and what was that like?
I was in Brisbane, which is the third largest city in Australia. It's like kind of tropical. It's north of Sydney. And again, it was a really good experience for me. I was saying that I have kind of a baseline anxiety, and I had been living in New York at the time. And in Australia, there's no rushing things.
Yeah.
It sort of forced me to stop and learn to relax a little bit and learn that things happen at their own pace and to accept that a little bit. And that's
Yeah.
something that at that point in my life, I really needed. And aesthetically, it's a beautiful place. And, it was very outdoor centric, which was very good for my mental health. And
Yeah.
it was just a really neat experience and a really beautiful place. I'm glad I had the opportunity to live there.
That's fantastic. It's wonderful to be able to get out of your native land from
Yeah.
time to time, for sure. Yeah. So what was your professional career before you started this nonprofit, EveryMom?
The bulk of my professional career was working for a major financial institution in New York. I worked there for over almost around 10 years. It was like almost exactly 10 years.
Oh.
Project manager. I did a lot of different roles within the company, everything from data security to help marketing and project management of launching new products and new software releases. And I wrote corporate policy. I did a lot of different things
Yeah.
during my time there. But it was a job that I took because at the time, my husband and I, we both were working in nonprofit publishing,
Oh.
which for New York City wasn't exactly paying the bills. So I took the job. I wasn't really growing much in the job that I had. And so, one of us kind of needed to make a little bit more money. And so I took this job and never meant to be there for the amount of time I was there. And it never was a job that spoke to me or to who I was, but it was something that I was good at and that paid well. And so in a way, I think, what do they call it? The golden handcuffs or the velvet coffin, or, you kind of get locked into it by the benefits and so I sort of stayed longer than I probably should have, I think.
Okay. So you worked in a nonprofit before now. Did you do any volunteering while you were in New York?
Yeah, I volunteer. I mean, I've been volunteering since I was a kid. I think I first started volunteering at 13 or so. Volunteering has always been a really big part of my life. And so I've truly actively been volunteering since I was a teenager.
Wow.
In
Okay.
different capacities. Yeah.
Okay. And then you relocated to Chicago. So when you went to Chicago, did you go there with the intention of starting a volunteer organization?
Oh, no, absolutely not. No, I came to Chicago, and at the time I was still working remotely for this financial institution. We moved here in January of 2020. COVID hit in March of 2020. I came across a mother I don't know if you may tell the story yet, or I can hold on.
Please. Yeah.
Yep, I met a mother. A mother posted on one of the parent groups that I was on online that she needed a car seat. Did anybody have an extra one? And I responded, because my oldest had outgrown her infant car seat, and said, I have one. It's in great condition. Happy for you to have it. And she said, that would be wonderful, but I don't have transportation. Is there any chance you could bring it to me?
Wow.
So I said, you know what? No problem. I'll bring it to you. And I put it in the car. I drove it out to her. And when I got there, I started talking to her about her situation. She was still pregnant. She had lost her job due to pregnancy-related illness. She was married, and her husband had lost his job. He worked in a restaurant. And at the time, in March of 2020, every restaurant was closed. So he was no longer working. She was 22, so she was very young. It was her first child. And she didn't have what she needed for the baby or for herself. And she didn't really have the resources to get those things. And she was in transitional housing at the time. So I asked if it would be okay because I thought, I bet if I ask around, and even if I look in, at my baby stuff, I probably have extra supplies that she could use. And she said that would be great. And so I went back and I posted on some of my parent groups, hey, I met this mom. She doesn't have what she needs. Does anyone have extra new or new baby supplies? And the response was overwhelming. And I received so many new or new things. And I wanted to make sure it felt really special. It didn't feel like a handout or hand-me-downs. I wanted it to feel dignified and special. And so I bundled everything. I wrapped it in ribbon. I put it in bags with tissue paper to make it feel more like a baby shower. And I drove out a whole SUV full of baby supplies to her. So I did this, and I was volunteering in the beginning of COVID. There's so many inspiring organizations in Chicago doing important pieces of the puzzle. And at the beginning of COVID, I just started reaching out to nonprofits and saying, what's something I can do right now that's helpful? Okay. And so I started volunteering in different capacities while I was still working and taking care of the kids. And throughout that first year, I did this kind of kit thing for a few other moms, and it just started brewing. And I kept saying to my husband, I don't know what this is building towards, but I feel like it's building towards something.
Right. Sounds like it. So yeah. So I want to look at this just a little more, because I'm curious. What do you think? And you can only share with us what you think. What made you care about that person whom you didn't know?
Yeah.
And secondly, you went to a neighborhood that you were not familiar with. What made you care about that? I'm curious, Jamie.
The neighborhood, I'll start with the neighborhood question only because, I had not spent much before we moved to Chicago. I hadn't really spent much time here. I hadn't even been here in like 8 years before we moved. I was pregnant when my husband got the job offer to move here. So it was not something we had been planning. It was sort of a thing that just happened. And but everything you read about Chicago is, you know, how it's such a divided city, and racially it's such a divided city and so segregated in the way that the city. And I remember like reading the New York Times years ago and looking at maps of how cities are segregated, and Chicago being one of the most stark examples between the south side of Chicago and the north side. And it's something that just always struck me. And so we moved to Chicago. We moved to the south side. I mean, we live in a beautiful neighborhood on the south side, and we kind of live, you know, we live where the university is, which is a beautiful area. But one of the things that was really important to me is for me and the kids to start knowing the neighborhoods around us and start being a part of those neighborhoods, and not feeling you know, there was such a stigma associated with the south side of Chicago. And there was a lot of people who were like, oh, you're moving to the south side of Chicago. And I was like, we didn't live in a great neighborhood, honestly, in New York. Like we lived in a lot of people didn't like the neighborhood we chose to live in New York. And so, but it's always important to me that my kids are exposed to everything and they feel comfortable in different situations and they can talk to anybody. And so before the pandemic hit, we started going to public libraries in different neighborhoods, and some of the more, you know, dangerous or the less, you know, some of the neighborhoods that you wouldn't typically go to in Chicago, just to like be around different types of people, see what the neighborhood was like. So that's all to say that when this mom said she was in this one specific neighborhood, I was like, you know what, fine, we'll go there. I don't want to have a constant fear in my life of where I go and where I am. And I want to be able to, I don't know, feel part of the different communities that we live in. With this mom, I mean, I think I feel for most mothers, and in part, when I was talking to her, the thing that struck me was like, oh, she doesn't know what she needs. And that's not really a judgment. That sounds judgmental when I say it, but it's not meant to sound judgmental, because in any scenario, in the best circumstances, what you think you need before you have your first child and what you actually need are two different things. And there's a discrepancy there.
Right. Understood. Yeah.
So I saw that and I thought, I have been through this road and I can help show her the things that would be helpful. And that's something that I didn't have myself. So I think being able to see that she had this need, and she didn't have anybody necessarily guiding her through the process, and that's something that I did not have myself, made me want to see if I could ease that for her, you know?
Okay. So that gets me, because I'm hearing a tender heart. I'm hearing you saw someone with a need. And I'm trying to think, where is this heart coming from? But you gave us a glimpse to it just then. In fact, you gave us a glimpse into it a moment ago, when you said that you've had experienced anxiety. And then you said, you know, look, I didn't have, you know, someone to guide me through my first pregnancy. So can you tell us more, though, about this tender heart? I want to feel more of that, if you don't mind, whatever you care to share.
I mean, I grew up with, you know, quite a bit of trauma. My mother committed suicide when I was 5.
Oh, wow.
My grandmother committed suicide when I was 1. So my mother's mother. My father struggled with mental health issues. And he was one who raised us, and it was just my sister and I. And so I think we were always, we were exposed to a lot of emotion, and we saw a lot of hurt from an early age. And so I think especially maybe, and this is kind of, especially with suicide, when you have somebody who's committed suicide in your life, there's always this longing to, what could I have done to prevent that? What could I do to have prevented that, or to prevent that in other people? Or like how you're so acutely aware of suffering and what that actually can lead to. What's the worst possible scenario here? And then you know what that worst possible scenario looks like. that in a sense, you'll almost do anything to prevent that for other people.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So, oh gosh, I mean, those are two traumatic events. How did you cope, and how do you feel that you've gotten through this knowledge that your mother and your grandmother had committed suicide?
um, I was a very emotional kid. I was very sensitive, and and so I think that made it hard growing up because I was very, um, a- like we said, attuned and empathetic to other people's suffering. So I think that made it very difficult growing up. But I think what that has turned into as I've gotten older is, um, I've been able to create really strong relationships and friendships because I can empathize with people. I
Mm,
have compassion for people's situations. Um, and I think those friendships have and those relationships have helped, um, I don't want to say overcome, because you never really overcome these things, right? But like,
understood. Yeah.
um, but helped me become a stronger person and kind of led to, I think that the emphasis in your life becomes on the relationships you have,
Yeah.
uh,
Understood. Yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful. And, and then you're doing this angelic, service, my word, important. That's important to the world. So at what point, though, Jamie, did you say to yourself, I want to start a nonprofit? And
mhm.
secondly, well, that's the second question along with it. At what point did you say, I'm going to call it EveryMom? I love the name. I just love the name EveryMom for sure. Yeah.
Um, so after I did the kit for I call it a kit but like the bundle of baby supplies, I did it for a couple of moms through some volunteer work and that I was doing. I was like, somebody's got to be doing this, right? Like this seems like an obvious thing. And I know that in other countries, it's a public health initiative. In other countries, literally the public health department gives every mother a newborn kit of all of the essential supplies they need, regardless of socioeconomic stat, like everybody starts off with the same material supplies. Um, so I started researching it, and I saw some states in the US had trialed public health programs to do something similar. I reached out to them to find out like what was happening, why didn't it work. I couldn't find any nonprofit in the US at the time that was doing something like this. I found for-profit companies. I since found a company an organization in New York that does something very similar. But I knew there were organizations that did important pieces of the puzzle, like here you could get free baby clothes, or here you could get a free car seat, or here you could get this, but not like here's the essentials of what you need to get started and take care of you and the baby. And so I was just kind of mulling it over and doing the research, and then started reaching out to social workers, other nonprofits operating in a similar space, doctors, early childhood development specialists, and just kind of like fleshing out the idea with them. Like, what would the ideal kit include? What am I not thinking about? What am I thinking about wrong? Is there a need for this? Is this something you guys would want? Especially with the nonprofits I was talking to. And after a while, I was like, I think there is a need. I think like maybe I should just do this and see how it goes and if this is helpful. And there was a lot of excitement around it. And so I spent a lot of the time researching it before I did it. Like I was doing it still on the side, but like, before I formally jumped in. And then I was talking to a friend, I was trying to come up with a name. And I could not come up with, nothing was, I was not coming up with great names. And I was talking to a friend in California, Jane, and I was telling her I was struggling with the name, and I was explaining the idea to her. And she was like, so it sounds like you think that every mom deserves to feel supported, deserves to have access to the supplies, deserves to, every mom should be able to, have the things they need. Why don't you just call it EveryMom?
Wow.
And so
Yeah.
she deserves the credit for the name.
Yeah, that's perfect. It's such a perfect name. And you mentioned kits early on. In fact, with the first young lady that you served, it seemed like you put together a kit.
Mhm.
So do you still give like a single kit to a mother, or how does that work?
Yeah.
So yeah, tell us about that.
Okay.
What's a kit? Yeah.
So there are the three standard kits that every mom in our program or who receives the kit can receive. There is a newborn kit, which contains all of like the essential newborn supplies. It contains, and it's packaged in an infant tub, so they have a safe space to bathe the baby, but it contains things like sleep sacks, safe sleep information, newborn clothes that are size newborn to 6 months that are seasonally appropriate for when the baby's born, really high quality diaper rash ointment, really high quality gentle baby wash, especially for babies who might have like eczema issues, thermometers, nail clippers, towels, board books, socks, baby wipes, diapers. There's a lot of items in there, pacifiers, bottles. So it's all like the newborn supplies. That's one kit. Then there's a postpartum kit for the mother, and that's packaged usually in a bag. And that has things that, if nobody told you, like steal all that stuff from the hospital, which I don't think anybody told me for my first, like, you don't know that like disposable underwear is the best thing ever when you've had a baby. Like disposable underwear will save your life. Really thick maxi pads, which are expensive, and the really thick ones are actually very hard to find. Perineal cold packs, some nice toiletries for the mom. So it's like a self-care package for the mom.
Okay.
And then there's a nursing kit that includes breastfeeding supplies for the mom if she's choosing to breastfeed. So that's like your standard set that most moms get, and they would get all three of those things, and the breastfeeding kit depending on whether or not they're breastfeeding. And then that, like the hospitals we work with, all of the hospitals get those kits and all of the moms get those. And then for the nonprofits we work with, the social worker or the mother can check off a form if there's additional big ticket things they need, like a car seat, a bassinet, a breast pump, a nursing pillow, changing pad, kind of like the bigger things. And if we have those things, then we provide those as well for those mothers.
Wow, that's a lot to think about. I was only thinking about the baby shower and what the baby needs, but you're saying it's much more than that. That's really good to know. So how do you source baby kits? These things have to come from somewhere. How do you make that happen?
So in the first year, it was just from parents in the community. It was just through other parents in the community who had extra baby supplies to give. Now that we've grown, we do get some wonderful corporate donations. Medela, which is a breastfeeding company, has been incredibly generous and donated breastfeeding supplies. There's a local Chicago or Illinois medical supply company called Neb Medical that has donated some supplies. Green Sprout. So we have some wonderful baby companies that have donated. We've done fundraising. A lot of the fundraising is from individual donors, which is amazing. And I always say, like, no amount is too small. $15 that actually provides 5 thermometers for 5 moms. So if you think about the impact on that, like $15 doesn't sound like that much, but if you break it down into like, what is it actually providing, or giving 3 moms really high quality diaper rash ointment, like you can see that it actually is making an impact. And then we apply for grants as well. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Well, sometimes when we think about financial support, some of us think foreign countries or distressed, third world countries. But what you're telling us is that right here in our country, some of our major cities, there are people who have needs. So that's good to know.
Yeah. And actually, one thing I did miss that is important, and I always like to mention it because in a way, I feel like it's ignorant not to. So the material items are helpful and they're wonderful. And so the kits obviously include these material items, but in addition to the material items, each kit includes a free resource guide to help connect the mom to other free resources in the community. Because I've stayed in touch with a lot of the women, and over the time, I've realized that obviously these women are facing a multitude of challenges and they need assistance with other areas. And so the resource guide helps connect them to where can they get ongoing support in the community. So where can they get things like free diapers and formula and that sort of thing, but also where can they get free childcare, free lactation counseling, free trauma counseling, free postpartum depression counseling, free housing assistance. Like we try to think more holistically. So that to me is actually as important really as the material items as well.
Yeah, I can see that. That's awesome. You've mentioned a little bit about the distribution of these kits.
Mhm.
Can you say more? You think you said some hospitals may distribute them. Can you tell us a little more about how you get these kits into the hands of the parents?
Yeah, so right now we partner with 4 hospitals on the south and west sides of Chicago. Their child life or their social worker, they kind of have their own criteria for who gets a kit within the hospital, but it's like their highest need patients. And then we also partner with other nonprofits around the city, majority on the south and west sides, but there's a couple of like we partner with a refugee agency that's based on the northwest side. But we partner with them, and usually the way that works is the social worker from the nonprofit will actually submit a form and let us know exactly what the mom needs. So the mom will get that standard kit, but then she can also get those extra things that we talked about if she needs. So we partner with domestic abuse shelters, refugee resettlement agencies, anti-violence groups, community centers, community health centers. And then occasionally we do have moms who reach out to us directly. And when we're able, we support them as well.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I want to talk about, because this is no longer going to be started as a one-person shop, but you have some people about you. So I want to talk about your volunteers. But you also mentioned a little while ago your intern. So so tell us about that. What type of individual that you're looking for. Tell us whatever you want to share about your internship program.
Sure. Well, this is our first intern, so we're very excited. She's a university student who is home for the summer, and she's been volunteering with us. I think she's an interest in social work and like social justice, and so she's been wonderful in helping us. I mean, for me, it's anybody that has a passion for helping and who's willing to get their hands dirty and do anything. I think is for the internship, and really kind of for volunteers too. It's just, to me, the number one thing is having a passion, like a good heart and a passion for helping. And then, I do everything. So some days I'm breaking down boxes, some days I'm, writing Instagram posts for our social media followers. I'm packing the kits, I'm delivering them. So, we're always looking for people who are willing to put on a variety of hats, and then also just exhibit kindness. I always think that like when we're delivering kits, I've really been glad because the intern that we're working with this summer, she's actually been there with me to deliver kits. She's been there when moms come by our office. She's met some of the nonprofits and the hospital partners. And it's great because I like that she gets to see how I'm interacting with the different people, because the thing that I always want everyone around the organization to feel is that there's no judgment and that we're really here to help.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's great. So do you invite volunteers and interns to apply at any time during the year, or is there a certain time during the year?
Anytime. Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. That is great. So look, I mean, things, even though you've mentioned people have donated, mothers have donated to you, but I'm sure you need financial support. What can you tell us about some of your sponsors, if any, if you have any sponsors?
Yeah. So all of our sponsors right now have donated material supplies, which is hugely helpful. We regularly do outreach to many of the brands that we already are like including in the kits. I mean, one thing I feel passionately about is that the kits include really high quality products. So it's not always just what is the cheapest, it's what is the best that I can also get at that price point. But and I usually like to include things that either I personally have used or I know other mothers have used or other parents have used and recommend. So often I'll use those things, and then I'll reach out to the company and be like, we love using your product. Would you consider donating, some product to us, and also letting us maybe purchase at discount, so that it's also a win-win, right? Like there's a little bit. So we had the first year's brand donate. I think they donated 150 of the infant tubs, which for us is one of our highest price point items. They literally delivered a pallet of those tubs to our front porch one day. Green Sprouts is another company. We just had a company, I think it's called Primary Organics. And I just reached out and they donated a bunch of baby clothes. So, we regularly just reach out to other organization or other corporations and see what they'd be willing to contribute,
That's great. Yeah. Would you be open to a graduate student in, let's say, sociology, social work, or some other area, study EveryMom to write a thesis, a master's thesis? Would you open to something like that?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I've just put the word out. If any graduate student is out there wanting to follow you for a few years and see where this goes, that would be exciting.
Actually, we had a professor from UIC reach out recently, and she helped us design a survey to include in the kits to kind of get a little bit of feedback from the mothers directly on the kit content, because I always want to, improve upon what we're doing. And so, yes, we're collecting some like high level demographic data, but the purpose for me personally is to get to know how can we improve what we're doing,
That's great. That's good to know. Do you have things like an advisory board, or are you at that stage or not yet?
We have a board of directors.
Oh, okay.
We do have a board of directors. And then I also, my husband is a staff member at the University of Chicago, not faculty, but he's a staff member. And so I was able to access the University of Chicago has something called the Polsky Center for Entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And it's usually meant for university, faculty and students and that sort of thing. But it's a series of mostly alumni from the University of Chicago that provide and professors that provide a mentorship to people interested in entrepreneurship or launching a business idea. So it's usually from a business perspective, but I actually have been participating in that since the beginning and meeting with mentors to get advice on everything from accounting and legal things to fundraising and marketing. And so I also kind of seek support from that angle as well. That's
fantastic. EveryMom, Chicago, what's your vision for EveryMom? If you care to just go to share it, what's your vision for EveryMom?
One thing we've been talking about is we would love for the kits to be more widely available. So we would love for it to be that anybody who truly needs one is able to access one. So we'd love to be able to ramp up our scale because the demand is there. We have a wait list of nonprofits and hospitals that want the kits, but we aren't able to meet that demand currently. So to be able to scale to that size, I think one thing we've discussed is to be able to almost have like a volunteer line of almost like a concierge service for the moms, because we provide this resource guide, but when you've just had a baby in any circumstance, you're so overwhelmed that I think it would be nice to almost have a support line where knowing that the mom might need more support, like she might need to know where can she get diapers or where can she get postpartum counseling, or a number that she can just call instead of having to sort through the resource guide herself. Where one of our volunteers could help walk them through what's available, and maybe they help make that phone call and stay on the line with them. Something a little more supportive to help get them there, and we'd love to be able to expand to other cities eventually,
That's great.
That's to other cities.
That's so good. It sounds like you all are certainly focused on serving the people in that community. Jamie, is there anything else you care to share with us that I have not asked you already?
I don't think so. No, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to talk with you and share more about what we do. And, this is my passion now. I really enjoy talking about it and sharing with people what we're doing. And I really enjoy when other people are interested in it,
Yeah.
And I also think, though, actually there is something I would like, because I was 35. No, how old am I? 30. I was like 37 when I started this, I guess, or 36. who can count the years? I was in my mid to later 30s when I started this. And up until that point, there was something that definitely felt missing in my life. And I felt like it just felt like this was not what I was meant to do with my life. And it was something that I always felt, and that was causing some sadness. Like I knew that my purpose was to give back and to help people. And I wasn't, even though I was volunteering, it just wasn't being met. But I would have never imagined that this is what I would have been doing. So I think the thing that sticks with me is this idea that I was like, I don't know what it's building towards, but it's building towards something. And thankfully I had a really supportive husband who kind of let me needle around and figure this out. And he could tell it was building towards something, but he didn't know what. So I just kind of want to encourage other people to, like, if you feel something like that, like, let yourself, I think it was terrifying. I did leave my other job and I wasn't working for a few months, and I was, volunteering, kind of figuring this out. And luckily, like financially it was tight, but we were able to do it. And I don't know, just going with that feeling and kind of exploring a little bit has led to this. I feel like I'm doing the thing that I was always meant to do. And one of the things I regularly hear from old coworkers is like, they'll regularly say, it's so beautiful to see you doing this thing that you were so clearly meant to do.
Wow. That's special. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. You found your path,
Yeah.
When I first heard you, and I heard you in another program, there was no doubt. I said, oh, I've got to get her on my Possibility Action Network show. So, and here you are. So, Jim, it was really, really a pleasure. I'm just fascinated and interested in what you all are doing. I think you're doing good work.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, you've been listening to the Possibility Action Network podcast with I'm the host, Stephen Middleton. We are committed to bring you guests who strive to better people's lives, and Jamie Taratoot with EveryMom is one of those individuals. It matters, she says, because every mom deserves to feel prepared, supported, and celebrated. Jamie, once again, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.